A lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders have a psychological imprint that could be similar to a sociopath. Entrepreneurs have just found a better way to channel all of that mania. I don't want to lose this drive. I don't want to lose this edge. I don't want to do this healing work because I don't want to get soft or lazy. But 100% of the time is that when they can resolve that trauma and they come into their work whole and healed, they are infinitely better leaders. First and foremost is to understand what you're trying to prove and who you're trying to prove it to. Like I said, a lot of times it's from the childhood, and this could be a parent, a relative, a bully, a teacher, somebody who said you're never going to amount to anything. And in that moment, they made a decision. They made some kind of decision that told them, I'm not worth it. I'm not enough. I'm going to have to do something to prove this.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dreamcatchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome, and I want to thank Brittany Anderson for sending us another amazing guest. Kelly is on with us today, Kelly Clements, and I just get a random text, Jerome, Kelly needs to be on the show, and if Brittany sends me a text like that, I say, okay. And so I send the link, and Kelly jumps on the calendar, and now we are here. Kelly, welcome to the podcast. How are things? What part of the country are you in?
I am in Chicago.
Chicago. Is it cold there still?
It is, yes. April and May are like you have winter jackets and flip-flops in your trunk at all times because you're going to need both of them at some point in the day.
None of these things sound fun. I am going to be up there in a few weeks, and so hopefully it's warm by the time I get there. All right. So, Kelly, what do you do? What's the problem that you solve?
I solve the problem that entrepreneurs have at home, which means they have all these amazing gifts and talents that have built really, really, really great businesses in the marketplace. But those same gifts and talents that build the business can be the exact same traits that are hard at home. So if you're driven in business, you're a control freak at home. If you're creative in business, you're manic at home. If you're well connected in business, you're spread too thin at home. And so that's why I see a lot of entrepreneurs gravitating back towards work where they're the hero because they don't know how to win at home. And entrepreneurs like to win. So I help entrepreneurs win at home, and I help their spouses feel like business is no longer getting the best of them and they're getting the rest of them.
All right. So it's almost like a yin and yang thing then.
Very, very much so.
Huh. So I've been picking at founders because a lot of them think that it's really cool to be like a superhero out in the ether sphere, and then they come at home and they're the villain.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Have you
Well,
found that that's had a negative impact on life overall, or people being able to navigate and manage that today still?
no, that's definitely, I mean, that's exactly what most of my clients, and I'm in a lot of entrepreneurial communities. This is a real dynamic. Um, and when we're out in the marketplace, we're in our strike zone. We get to control the player, as entrepreneurs, we get to control the people that we're around, the clients that we're working with. And our spouses have a view of us that we're not always ready to see. And so, there's parts of us that are known to ourselves and known to others. There's parts of us that are not known to ourselves, but known to others. And that's what our spouses can see. Our spouses can see our blind spot. And a lot of time when they're ready to show us, we're not ready to hear it. Because let's face it, we have stacks of evidence in business that says that we're doing just fine. And it can be disheartening when we go home and the person that we want to impress the most in the world only has criticism for us or is really eager to show us where we're falling short. That can hurt because the only person, like we can build a lot of success, but the person we want the most to be excited about it is our partner. But if they're getting our scraps and they're getting our leftovers, how can we expect them to be so excited about who we are in the world? Because they're not recipient of it.
Now, you said we have evidence, and then we come home and we get something to the contrary.
Mhm.
That person's critical of us. They don't think we're so great, and they're getting scraps. And so, why would they think we're great? I I always go back to the scene in The Pursuit of Happiness where the main character tells his wife that he's going to be a stockbroker. And she says, "Why don't you be an astronaut?" And I think so many founders are out there fighting the fight and then fighting at home. And do you think that them fighting the fight is causation for all of the stuff that's coming on at home, or is it case by case? Like, are there some stereotypes that we can probably see as truth?
So it's definitely case by case, but here's what I see in generalization terms. What I see that propels most entrepreneurs is approving energy. They're working to prove dad wrong. They're working to prove the high school bully wrong. They're working to prove their background wrong. They're working to prove or overcompensate something. And that's really great. They found a really great channel to take all of the hurt, disappointment, upset from their past and put it into a productive pursuit. Because if you look from a psychological perspective, a lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders have a psychological imprint that could be similar to a sociopath. Entrepreneurs have just found a better way to channel all of that mania, which is great. We love that because the flip side of that is a lot of times addiction that can totally derail life. So it's a great pursuit and it's a great way to channel all of that energy. But when it's unresolved, our partner is the one that gets the brunt of that. Our partner is the one that has to live with all of our unresolved trauma or upset. That's where it comes out, is in the relationship. And so again, that's a very general term or a very general lens that I'm looking through. But until we're ready to do the work on ourselves, that dynamic will always be there. And a lot of the times when I'm working with my clients on this, they're like, I am scared to death to resolve this, because this energy, this jagged edge that I feel is what drives my success. And if I resolve this, how will I be successful? I don't want to lose this drive. I don't want to lose this edge. I don't want to do this healing work because I don't want to get soft or lazy. But 100% of the time is that when they can resolve that trauma and they come into their work whole and healed, they are infinitely better leaders. They have the patience to actually sit down and open up the hood of the business and look at what's working and what's not working and make sustainable changes. That's when the valuation of the business increases, because they're not just doing these drive-by delegations and I don't want to look at it, I'm too busy. They can sit down and they have the patience to look at the business and really comb through actionable and sustainable solutions. So now the business, not only is the business worth more, now when they're home, they can be present. Their spouse feels like they're getting the best of them. They don't feel like they're dealing with the shadows all of the time.
This is interesting because it feels so. I At first I wanted to say dark, but I don't know that it feels dark. I think you can see the pain,
Mm,
right? You can feel the
sure.
pain. I'm a second thought. You're over here doing this thing. It's getting the best of you. You expect me to be here when you're done doing the other stuff. But then you talked about the pain of the founder with them saying, I don't know if I want to reveal this. So, and then the pain that is the stimulus for the proving energy, right?
Mhm.
This went wrong. And so now I'm going to I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm right, or I'm crazy, or I'm good enough, or whatever the thing that they're going for. Can we talk more about proving energy? And if proving energy, you said it was good because it helps you be motivated to go do the thing, but is that the energy that we actually want to be in as founders, or is there something else that we're striving to achieve?
I think for founders, the most important energy to be in is creativity and curiosity. When we can be really, really curious, that's when we can be in a space of no judgment. And we can look like, what if we tried this? And what if I didn't get used to this is the way we've always done it mentality? And what if I tried to bring in other approaches? That's where disruption in industry happens, is when we can break the way that it's always been done, because we're bringing in methods or approaches from a completely unrelated industry. And so if you can maintain curiosity, which is no judgment, and you can maintain creativity, which is we're always looking for innovation, but when we're in survival mode, we're not as creative as we could be. When we're running from the proverbial buffaloes. We're not like thinking about new ideas. We're just trying to get to the nearest tree that we can climb. And so if we can downshift out of proving energy, which is survival, and we can get into creation mode, we're going to be a much better founder, entrepreneur, or leader, because we're creating new and better ways. It's coming from a source of abundance and not scarcity or lack.
I think a lot of folks, and you said creativity. So do you think folks are actually creative when they're in scarcity?
No, no, scarcity is survival. That's the proving energy that we're in. That's why I encourage people to do the healing work to get out of the proving energy. You already are enough. And when you can do the work to get to that place of recognizing that you're creating out for creation's sake, because your source that you're creating from is from abundance, you are no longer proving. Creativity is an abundance pursuit.
So I don't know if this is a fair question because I think it's pretty challenging, but I'm going to ask and see where it takes us. How do we move out of the proving energy? Like, is there a process? Is there some steps that we need to take in order to, or is it just like a decision? It's like, oh, I'm not going to live that way anymore.
No, I think there's definitely a process. And I think first and foremost is to understand what you're trying to prove and who you're trying to prove it to. Like I said, a lot of times it's from the childhood, and this could be a parent, a relative, a bully, a teacher, somebody who said you're never going to amount to anything. And in that moment, they made a decision. They made some kind of decision that told them, I'm not worth it. I'm not enough. I'm going to have to do something to prove this. Hence this proving energy that we have. And when you can get to the point where you say, I remember the thing that made me take this path. I remember that statement. I'm going to go back to that moment. And in that moment, realize that that is this person's problem. Whoever caused this sense of proving this in your life, putting that back on them, like, I am worthy. I am enough. I am unique. I am created for a reason. I am called for a reason, with or without this. And just by virtue of being who I am enough. And now I create from abundance. But you have to understand what you're proving and who you're proving it to so that you can resolve that.
I like the way you put that because the thing that came to mind for me was forgiveness.
Mm.
You're not trying to prove things to people that you've forgiven, because like the proving energy is like, I'm gonna show you that you're wrong, I'm right, I'm vindicated, you never should have said those things to me, or whatever the thing was that happened as a result of you moving to that space or reacting to it with proving energy. And so figuring out, and I've been doing a lot of work here, so this is interesting. So figuring out kind of the need, right? What need was triggered for you that wasn't met? And then do you need to actually express that with a person, or is this independent of other people?
It's independent. A lot of times the person who did that probably doesn't even know that they had that impact on you. I know when I started doing this work, I realized that I had made major life decisions based on a comment that a boy in fourth grade made to me. And that was when the teacher was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my hand was the first one up. And I said, I'm going to be an astronaut. And he looked at me and said, Kelly, you can't be an astronaut. You have to be smart to be an astronaut. And in that moment, I was like, and this was a little boy that had a crush on me. In that moment, I was like, oh, he likes me because I'm fun. And I became the fun girl. And I went through high school, life of the party, went to college, majored in recreation, which is fun because it had become my whole identity. Like, I don't need his resolution on that. I just need to realize that I made entire life choices based on this one passing remark that one person made to me in fourth grade. And so when you realize that, it's like, what am I doing? And so yes, forgiveness, but also like, thank you. Thank you so much for saying this to me, because this became the thing that set the rest of my life in motion. And it might have come from a place of fear or lack or unworthiness. But now that I've created this and I have new consciousness and I have new tools and I have new awareness, now I can 10x, because now I can do all of this that I've already done, but I can do it from clear consciousness. I can do it from abundance. I can do it from all of these resources that I've like scrapped and clawed my way to get. And now I can do it from abundance. So now what's possible?
Creativity, right? That's aligned with abundance. This is so good. So one of the concepts that I've been playing with over the past year is whether or not humble is a desirable trait. You talked about worthiness and deservedness, and then you talked about unworthiness in the last little snippet that you offered to us. So, how does worthiness or deserving it fit into the grand scheme of things? Because I think a lot of people have been taught to be humble.
Sure. So it's funny that you say that because the work that I've been doing on humble is, I think it's a trait that we've all been trained to embody. And anytime we're too much of anything, it becomes toxic. So that's what the definition of toxic is. It's too much. Anytime there's too much of anything, it's toxic. And one of the ways that I see toxic humility playing out right now is like when somebody wants to genuinely see you, they genuinely want to give you a comment, they genuinely want to like appreciate you or compliment your traits. It's like, oh, it's nothing, and oh, I couldn't, no big deal, and they brush it off. That leaves the complimenter feeling rejected. There's no sense of connection. Like, have you ever noticed how we use the word reception and connection interchangeably? I don't have good reception here. I don't have good connection here. When we're talking about cell phone or Wi-Fi, we talk about reception and connection interchangeably. And when we're not receiving that praise or we're not receiving that recognition, and I mean receiving, I don't mean taking. There's a difference between taking appreciation and receiving it. When we're not receiving that recognition, we interrupt the connection. There's interference, and we lose that chance for genuine, authentic connection that I think so many of us are so desperate for right now. And so I think that's one place where we take humility too far, is we brush off the compliments or we brush off the praise and we brush it aside. And so I think when we talk about humility, one way to receive it is, thank you. That means so much coming from you. Like, what does that do? And so, and I think also like when we get into like coached or trained humility, it's not actually humility, and I think part of humbling ourselves is realizing like, I am magnificent. That doesn't mean that I'm more magnificent than you. My magnificence does not cost you anything. Your magnificence does not cost me anything. We can both be equally magnificent, and in that, there's humility.
It's so good. It's so good because the themes are coherent. Like each time we go to a new space, we come back to the place of abundance. Right? From a place of abundance, me having whatever I have doesn't impact what you have or don't have. In this place of scarcity, I can only have that if you don't have it.
Mhm.
Now, you introduced a new concept to me, and so we've got to go down the rabbit hole on it. What is the difference between receiving and taking?
Okay. Receiving is when somebody's giving something to you. It's on offer. They're offering it to you. So they're initiating the exchange by giving it to you. And if you reject it, or you decline it, or you brush it off, connection is interrupted. That's receiving, is when it's on offer to you. Taking is when it's not on offer. And so you're working on a business deal together with a business partner, and you just close a big deal, and you go back to the team and you're like, I did it, guys. I signed them. I had the killer closer deal, and there's nothing on offer. It's not your partner saying they did a really good job. It was really, they really like understood the client. They asked the right questions. That person just took it. It's not on offer. I'm gonna take credit for that. I'm gonna take recognition for that because it's not on offer. Again, now it really interrupts the connection because you're taking something away from someone else.
I just realized that we say take credit. Literally, like
Yeah.
you want to take credit for that. No, give me credit for it. And so there's a receiving there it is. Man, do you find hmm, so do you find people actually growing their business when they live in that space?
100%. I always say that your marriage is a multiplier because when we do the work on ourselves, we automatically become a better leader at work, a better parent, a better spouse or partner, a better child, daughter, son, friends, neighbor. Because when we take really good care of ourselves, we're automatically better at everything, and confidence goes up. And making money is a confidence game. Getting great team members is a confidence game. Getting great clients is a confidence game. So when your confidence is high, what can't you do? Nothing. Nothing. And so taking care, this is a Dan Sullivan quote, is like the number one job of an entrepreneur is to always protect your confidence. It's confidence when we're doing the inner work, and it's coming from, again, here's that word, abundance. It's arrogant when we're acting confident, but we haven't done the inner work. Then there's this veil or this persona of confidence that comes across as arrogance because it's coming from that place of weakness, brokenness, darkness, whatever we want to call that. Confidence is the magnifier, which is why it's also the multiplier, because it brings everything to you.
So and so money is a confidence game. Tell me more about that.
So, confident people when you meet them, and again, I'm talking about confident, not arrogant. I think especially at this stage of the game, we're very, very in tune with arrogance, and there's a natural appellant to it. But when someone is genuinely confident, you know what that pull is like. They have leadership. They must know what they're doing. We're all looking for leadership right now. We're all looking for truth right now. And so if you can find somebody right now that you trust and that can lead you to where you want to go, whether that's with your money, your health, your relationships, your home, like whatever the business is, and we find somebody who's confident, of course we're going to do business with them. This is the human potential. This is the human way. And so when we have that confidence, it's bulletproof. It's a currency, which is also what money is a currency. Like attracts like. So when we're operating at this really high frequency of confidence, that's where all of the blessings are available to us because we're at the same frequency of it.
You can't attract it if you're not on the right frequency, right?
That's right. It's becoming the match.
Now I'm looking over your right shoulder and it looks like there's a book on the wall, and not a regular book, but a big book. What's the title of that?
That is called Grow Your Business Without Growing Apart. That is my second book that was released actually a year and 4 days ago.
All right. Tell me about this, because I think, based on the title, I think I know where it goes, but I don't want to assume.
So this is, it's a 2-part book, and both parts are equally important. And it starts off, the first part is really understanding what I call the relationship framework, and it's alpha, beta energy. So as I said before, most entrepreneurs, the things that make us successful in business are the same things that are challenging at home. So I would call, generally speaking, entrepreneurs alpha. Alphas by definition are confident, self-assured, self-preserving. They know to preserve, that in order to serve the tribe, they need to preserve themselves. Often alphas end up with a personality who can be a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more go with the flow, a little bit more yielding or open. This would be called beta. Now, when both people are healthy, this is a beautiful dynamic. However, when one person goes unhealthy, so say we have an unhealthy alpha, this person goes from confident to arrogant. They will harm others to preserve themselves, where a confident alpha will preserve themselves so they can protect others. You see that difference? Healthy alpha will preserve themselves so that they can protect others. Unhealthy alpha will harm others so that they can protect themselves. So you can imagine if one person goes unhealthy alpha, they're willing to harm their spouse emotionally, psychologically, how, not necessarily physically, but there's other ways to preserve themselves in the relationship. Or if we have unhealthy beta, which is somebody who continually overrides his or her own needs to support everybody else, they're self-sacrificial, which in most religions is heralded as noble. I would tell you otherwise, because we can't give from an empty cup. So if you have an unhealthy beta, alpha will end up feeling like they have a shell of a partner. My partner's always exhausted, they're checked out, they're disconnected, they're depressed, like whatever happens because this person has become self-sacrificial. So in the first part of this book, I talk about the concept of omega, which is the best of alpha and the best of beta, and how to achieve those dynamics in a relationship. And then the second part of the book, I have the presence principles. And the presence principles are 6 strategies that couples can like consciously integrate into their relationship so that both people feel like they're one another's highest priorities. Because a lot of times it feels like either the business or the kids are the top priority and the marriage is second, third, fourth on the list. So those strategies that I talk about are play, praise, purpose, provision, protection, and pursuit. And then the second half of the book goes into all 6 of those strategies.
Whoa, you went really fast. Give me those 6 again.
Yep. Play, praise, and purpose. So having fun, making sure that your compliment to criticism ratio is more affirming than it is critical. Purpose is that both people have a bigger vision of a shared future together. Provision is not only financial provision, but emotional provision, social provision, leadership, any ways that we contribute to the relationship. Protection, their safety and security is top of mind. And pursuit, which is how you keep that sense of aliveness and flirtiness alive in a long-term relationship.
Those sounds. How'd you find those? Come on now. That's not in a book anywhere. Where'd you get those from, Kelly?
It is now. A lot of it was from my own journey. Provision, protection, and pursuit is pretty universal for masculine conversations. They take a different turn when we put it in the, take it out of just the masculine conversation and put it into the entrepreneurial or driven conversation. Those provision, protection, pursuit, those 3 tend to take on a little bit of a nuanced meaning. But play, praise, and purpose is something that I learned through my own journey. Again, play, hello, recreation major. But the reason play is so important is because entrepreneurs get into flow state or the zone in their business, which is why we like to gravitate to our business so much.
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dreamcatchers. Your dreams should be real.
And we can duplicate that state of flow through play. We can get back into flow state with our significant other if we're playing together and having fun together. That's the energy that gets us to the altar. The dating game is filled with play, but a lot of times we get into adulthood and we stop doing it. So play brings in that aspect of fun and connection again. Ooh. And praise, really making sure the compliment to criticism ratio, especially for men, because men tend to need significance in their relationship. That sense of praise is one way to help the couple feel like they're getting the best of one another and not just complaining or criticizing one another.
Compliment to criticism ratio.
Yes.
Is this a Kellyism or is this a thing?
This is something that I learned through, I was coaching a program called Lifebook, founded by John and Missy Butcher. And this is something that they talk about in their program, is like really getting clear on the compliment to criticism ratio. So often in long-term relationships, we become the one that's always pointing out our partner's flaws. And it's the thing that we fall in love with our partner early on. That exact same trait is a thing that starts to drive us nuts later. So we have to get retrained to find the joy and the magic in that. It's like, do you see their magic or do you see their mania? often it's the same trait. And so it's retraining ourselves so that we have a better story about our partner, so we can keep seeing that magic and not just focusing on the mania.
Man, you're dropping so many jewels today, because it's like, here's a snippet and here's a snippet. Compliment to
Criticism.
criticism ratio. This is, wow. I'm taking that one in, because I've seen some people say something like you've got to do 8 or 10 compliments to erase a criticism or something like that. Is there some type of guidance on what it should be?
So it's different for every person. My big thing is 1%. You can change a relationship with 1% effort every single day. 1% of your day, 14 minutes, 24 seconds. If you can get 14 minutes and 24 seconds of play into your relationship every single day, what does that do? So when we talk about compliment to criticism ratio, if you're complimenting 1% more than you're criticizing, you're winning. Most couples aren't. Here's how I know. In the absence of praise or in the absence of compliments, everything can feel like a criticism. Suggestions can feel like a criticism. Questions can feel like a criticism. Why'd you do it this way? Hey, what if you put it here? But there's never any compliments. It will always feel like a request for correction. It will always feel like criticism. And so a lot of times couples are fighting about this, and it's like, I don't think he's wrong. I was genuinely curious. Why are you driving this way? Or why are you parking in that spot? Or why did you hang it like that? I'm genuinely curious. But when you're not affirming and you're not seeing the best in them, that's what intimacy is. Intimacy, if you're not seeing their best, the qualities, it's going to dampen the relationship, because they're going to feel like they can't do anything right because they're not being told otherwise.
All right. Now, this is a question I probably should have asked an hour ago. I'm gonna ask it now. How did you come to the realization that the relationship is so important for founders to truly have success?
So literally day one of my coaching career. So I started coaching in 2004 for a company called Strategic Coach, founded by Dan Sullivan. It's widely recognized as as the top entrepreneurial coaching company in the world. And I started working there as a 25-year-old. I was a newlywed. A lot of my friends were getting married. So I had a lot of attention on the love relationship, because it was a season of my life where everyone was just getting married. And I remember sitting in the workshop room my first day when I was learning how to coach and like what the concepts were. And I remember entrepreneurs would break into breakout groups and they'd talk. And a lot of the conversations, when I heard clients talking about their spouse or their wife or their husband as their greatest asset or their number one cheerleader, they were just on a different level. They were just hitting different levels of success versus those that weren't, those that were criticizing about their spouse or partner, those that couldn't ever get it right. And as my coaching career progressed, and I watched these clients and how their careers evolved, those that had great spouses always hitting next levels. Those that didn't have great marriages or they were single, they were always hitting this level of the ceiling of complexity. There was an energy of grind, dissatisfaction, never enoughness. And I'm sure that there's correlation there in their own psychology, but there was just a different path to success. So I observed it at first, and then I experienced it. I experienced what it was like when, like, two become one. The example that we would use here is a Clydesdale. So one Clydesdale working alone can pull 8,000 pounds. That would stand to reason that if you had another Clydesdale, they can pull 16,000 pounds, but that's not true. Two Clydesdales when working together can pull 24,000 pounds. They have 1 + 1 = 3 synergy because they're working together. They can triple their workload when they work in pairs. And I saw this to be true in a marriage. I experienced it for myself. And I always say that my mess has become my message, because in my first marriage, like I said, I was a newlywed. I had just gotten introduced into this coaching world. And so I would come home every day after work talking about what my clients were doing. Pretty soon my stories became requests. We should start a business together. We could do this together. We could do that together. And over the months and years, at first, my husband humored me. And finally, one day after we had kids, he looked at me, he said, Kelly, why can't this just be enough for you? Why do you always need more? And I was like, uh-oh, we are not going to the same place. And so we got swallowed up by what I now call the ambition gap. In my next relationship, I went for the exact opposite, somebody who was equally as driven as me. And I understood what life was like to do life with him and what happened to us as individuals and professionals when we joined forces, because we had that. I always say we didn't have 1 + 1 = 3 synergy. We had 1 + 1 = 100. Like we just blow things up because I got to experience that. And I see that in my couples. It's what I work for, of like really embracing the wisdom, because your partner is your greatest teacher. And if you can integrate that wisdom and their offerings of what they're trying to tell you as wisdom and guidance instead of criticism, there is wisdom in it. So it's really about offering it in a way that they can receive it.
Offering it in a way they can receive it. So I find so many people don't actually feel like it's their responsibility as a messenger to make sure the person that they're sending the message to gets it or can receive it. And you just said make sure they can receive it.
It's just kinder. This is our partner. Like, and when we start to get into the energy of like, that's not my responsibility, in some situations that's necessary. If boundaries are being crossed, expectations aren't being met, there's any level of incoherence, it gets a little dicier. But if we assume that these are two healthy people who love each other and want to do better, but they've just fallen into bad habits, it's just nicer to offer it in a way that they can digest it. It's kinder. And if we come at it like that, it's going to help our partner feel like we're truly trying to help them instead of just always trying to change them.
Did you say change them?
Mhm.
Why would we try to change them?
I don't know, but a lot of times that's how partners feel. They can't accept how I am. I feel like they're always trying to change me. It's not who I am. And a lot of times I think that is a result of people just giving information that they can't metabolize or they can't digest. And so if you can meet them where they're at, it becomes guidance. If you can't and you're just hurling criticisms or you're just hurling demands, it feels like you're trying to change me.
Oh. And so it is just criticism.
Mhm.
Because if you're hurling demands, then oh, this gets ugly really fast. So one of the things that I've told people in the past, and maybe this is bad, is that you have to give folks a reason to want to compliment you, or you have to stay interesting so they want to get to know you from the intimacy standpoint. What what do you think about that? Is that off base, or is there something that is kind of true there?
No, I think there's some truth in that. It's, if we're always showing up as our best and we're always coming from a place of service where we want to show up as our best and we want to make an impact, the praise, the applause, that will be a natural byproduct of it. Again, this is another Sullivan rule, is always making your performance greater than your applause is going to keep you in a place of service. When you can come from that of always wanting to serve more than any round of applause could ever give you, that's it. First of all, it's not only just about the applause, it's also about the fulfillment. That's what growth is. It keeps us leading on the leading edge of growth.
Wait, say that part about the fulfillment again?
When we're always learning to show up bigger, better, faster, stronger, pick the metric, that's how we get fulfillment as people. That's how we're learning, we're growing our own toolkit. We're nurturing our own talents, and that's where fulfillment comes from.
So growth is what creates fulfillment.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that creates fulfillment. Connection creates fulfillment. Um, Forgiveness creates fulfillment. Gratitude creates fulfillment.
I've heard the gratitude, but not the forgiveness. Can we talk about that a little?
Sure.
So, how does forgiving other people give you fulfillment as the forgiver?
the way that I can describe is it takes the void out. And so when we're in unforgiveness and we hold on to anger, it creates a void in us that is filled with this space that says, if they wouldn't have done that, my life would have been better. So there's this void because it feels like we're out of control. We're disempowered. This thing happened. My life turned left. Now I am worse off because of it. And there's this void that happens right here. Forgiveness, and I know forgiveness is something that a lot of people struggle with. Forgiveness is not accepting or acknowledging that what the other person did was okay. Forgiveness is releasing the belief that life would have been better if they didn't do it. And so when you release that belief, this void goes away, which creates fulfillment.
Because you
Because
fill the gap, because the void is gone, right?
yes, that's right.
Huh. I like that. The other way that I've heard forgiveness described is giving up your feeling of being owed revenge, or
Yes.
somebody receiving or exacting a punishment on them,
Mhm.
which I've never actually seen anybody feel better when somebody got punished. Um,
Yeah,
I think it's a lack of humanity if you actually want to see somebody hurt or be in pain.
sure.
So go ahead. You were about to say something.
Well, hurt people hurt people. And so if we realize that their hurt that they did to us was just them not being in forgiveness, and now we're just going to be another part of the domino if we don't forgive, because now our hurt from them is going to turn on to hurt to four other people, and that chain just keeps growing. And so when we just recognize like whatever they did to us, intentional or otherwise, came from a place of their own hurt, it becomes less about us. It becomes less about something that was done to us and now can become something that was done for us.
I love the for us. I think everything that happens for a reason. And you talked about your mess becoming a message and your ability to help folks by experiencing the growing apart because you were heading on two different paths. Now,
Mhm.
what's really cool about what you described is, hey, I got exposed to this stuff and I was trying to share it. I shared it with my partner, but my partner didn't have those same interests or ambitions. And so we grew apart. I think there's so many, you called it ambition gap, which is the first time I've actually heard it phrased that way. So is the ambition gap a normal thing for founders and maybe folks who aren't founders? And how do you overcome it?
So a lot of, is it normal, common? Yes, very much so. Um, in two dynamics, sometimes very highly driven people will naturally gravitate towards somebody who isn't very ambitious because it's like, okay, they're not going to get in my way. I'm going, they can plug in, they can take care of life at home, and I can go. Again, really, really desirable in the beginning. However, years down the road, this driven entrepreneur will say something like, he or she could be doing so much more. You know, they're great. They love yoga. I know exactly how I could open their own yoga studio and I could scale it and we could take it nationwide. And the partner's like, I don't want to do that. I don't need to monetize every dream I have. And so that's where one couple would get swallowed up by the ambition gap. The other way that I see this play out is highly driven entrepreneur meets highly driven entrepreneur. It's like, oh, they get me. You know, we can do this together. Like we charge each other up. Really, really explosive in the beginning. However, at some point to make relationships work, someone's got to yield. There needs to be somebody who can accommodate and yield in relationships, and asking either one of the driven entrepreneurs can often become a stalemate. And so it turns into something very, very different. That's why I created the Alpha Omega framework, is to help couples navigate this, because this is the thing, this is the dynamic that will get most couples either stuck or caught in a loop. So yes, it's common. And I forgot the second part of your question.
Well, I think the question is, how do we overcome it?
Okay, so that is how you overcome it, is by naming it. And that's what this framework does, is this is where it's my time to yield. This is when it's your turn to yield. And yielding for a driven entrepreneur doesn't have to mean losing. I think a lot of times driven entrepreneurs don't like to yield or compromise because it can feel like loss to them. They're driven, they're wired to win. And so when we understand, like, sometimes it's accommodation, it's not losing, it's a little bit easier to navigate life as a couple.
But what does yielding mean? Because you got me here. Because this is I know there's somebody out there like, well, I'm the one that's the breadwinner, or I'm the one that's creating the opportunities, or insert the privilege that's associated with the person building. And they're saying, so you want me to stop that for their comfort?
Most often it's not a request for, like, it's not a permanent request to stop. It's, hey, I need you for a weekend. Hey, I want to do a vacation that's not attached to one of your business conferences. Hey, when you come home, can you put your phone down so that we can interact as a family? They're not major permanent requests. They're temporary. It's, again, it's the one percenters. Can you be present for the evening? Can you make it to some of the baseball games? That's yielding. Is I'm going to make small accommodations here or there for the greater good of the family, not, if you want me to work, I have to be 100% capacity 100% of the time. That is not true. That makes a very one-dimensional person. So when I talk about yielding, I don't mean stopping. I mean, oh, wait, I have another person doing an entire life with me. There are times I need to meet their needs, not just keep steamrolling everybody around me.
You're so much nicer than me. You said, because I would have called it a cop out, right? I got to be 100% on this thing or it's going to fall apart. That's a cop out.
Sure, it's a very noble excuse. You know, I'm doing all of this for us. I'm doing all of this so we can have this lifestyle. I'm doing all of this so we can send our kids to school. You can still do all of this, but you probably don't need to do all of it all the time. And if you got really, really real with yourself, you'd probably find some areas, number one, why you keep gravitating towards work. You know, if we fix things at home and home becomes as exciting or as connected as it feels at work, are you going to keep gravitating towards work? Probably not. So that's why if we can spin life over here so it feels just as rejuvenating as work, now what do we have? That's why I say that your marriage is a multiplier. It makes everything around you better.
Now, for the person that's not out there, they might feel, who's out there and not in a relationship, they might feel doomed, right? Because you said they hit the ceiling, they've got the psychological issues going on with not being coupled and so on and so forth. But maybe they decided that they didn't want to be in a relationship because they wanted to spend the time on their first love, which is probably the business.
And in that case, I think it's probably a wise decision that they stayed solo. And I'm not like, I'm not saying the only way to success or the only way to have a super successful business is through partnership. I am saying if you are in partnership, if you can recognize what a multiplier that is, you're going to be a lot more compelled to invest and fix this instead of just kicking the can down the road. I do think being in partnership, underscore this next part, with the right person is a game changer. And so if it's being single versus being in partnership with the wrong person, I'm picking being single every single time. If I'm picking being in partnership with the right person and having a business versus being single, I'm picking being in partnership with the right person and being in business every single time.
All right. And so we'll land the plane here with, how do you know when you got the right person, Kelly?
Your knower knows.
The knower.
You just know. It's a hard decision. You know, this is hard intelligence. It's not something that's quantifiable. It's your knower just knows. And there's ways where people, like, when you're manifesting the right partner, you come up with the list and you come up with everything that you want to call that person in. And yes, I highly, highly, highly recommend that, as long as it resonates with your heart. You know, as long as you feel that coherence. If you're looking at a box and you're checking it off, it's like, I don't know, on paper, like they tick all the boxes, but something's just not right. Something's just not right. It's that unquantifiable. And so your knower knows. And if you're looking at the list and you're like, they check all the boxes, but something's just not right, your knower knows.
Ooh.
That's the worst feeling. I've got this amazing person and I just can't get it to click. That's the worst feeling in the world. And it's a big, bold, brave move to let that go. And the right person cannot come in when the wrong person is in that spot.
Because they're taking up the space. There is no room.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably chaos and a bunch of other stuff going on as a result of that incongruency.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Kelly, what a phenomenal episode. What in the world? I didn't see this coming out of this. We covered so much ground. Uh, if you would, do me a favor and tell me what's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode? Because we've been everywhere.
I want them to take away the perspective of really, really, really how important their personal lives are. I'm going to take this outside of the scope of relationship, which is normally I talk about how important their personal lives are. You know, that they have to be a happy, healthy person to have a happy, healthy business or a happy, healthy marriage. And I want to leave with one story. I have one client. I in my mind, I always build a super entrepreneur, which is when I take one trait from all my whole client base, and I'm like, if I could put all these together, I'd have a super entrepreneur. And one of my clients is religious about spoiling his 15-year-old self. So he's got a list of all the Nintendo games from his childhood that he wants to have. And he knows, he loves like the legacy toys and he loves the legacy vacations. Like he just is so in touch with his 15-year-old self. And he spoils that inner child rotten. And it shows in every aspect of his life. His team loves him. His competitors love him. Like he's the one when he goes to trade shows, like he's just like a beloved fixture in his industry, in his home community. His wife adores him, his kids adore him. And I believe it is because he spoiled that 15-year-old rotten in all of the best ways of just really honoring what his inner child needs. So that's what I want the listeners to take away, is really just getting in touch with what their person needs. Everything else takes care of the rest when you're in touch with that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I never thought about spoiling my 15-year-old self, but he continues to get older and he's more expensive. That guy that I tend to spoil.
That's probably not your 15-year-old self then.
Yeah, he wants some pretty expensive stuff. he, well, I don't know. He might have had some of the pictures on the wall when he was 15. Anyway, so how can the listeners find out more about you and what you do?
Probably the best way is to go to my website, which is kellyclements.com, and you can go down any rabbit hole you'd like from there.
Kelly, you're a dream catcher and you're helping others catch their dreams. I'll tell you what, this was a phenomenal episode. Your perspective on the importance of making sure that the relationship that you're in either ends or works so that it can be a multiplier for your success in business for those who are focused more on the business side than on the relationship side. I think it just makes so much sense. You talked about those six I
Presence
don't remember
principles.
six presence principles. And I was going to say principles, but I was like, but that's another P with all the other P's. And so can we really have that many P's together? But like those are so cool. And I say they're cool because like you're just kind of moving up the ladder, right? But the three P's um, that you mentioned on the first part, I was like, man, if somebody could just nail those, their life is going to be pretty exceptional.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
so even though, and I think you said four of them were pretty universal, but three of them were tied to masculinity. And so in a world where people are talking about toxic masculinity and not being masculine and all of these other things, to have something to anchor against, I think is phenomenal. So Kelly, thank you so much for being on the episode and sharing with our listeners, because I know that I got a lot from it.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you.
To the listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.